Relationships are key to stopping prisoners reoffending and vital to reforming a prison system which, as we have reported on this programme, has seen a surge in levels of violence and self-harm. According to a government review out today, research has shown that inmates who receive visits from a family member are 39% less likely to offend again. The team behind the research took in over 1,000 submissions from men in prison, their families, voluntary organisations, academics and members of staff in the sector. And recommendations include inmates being able to use Skype or FaceTime on iPads to talk to their relatives at home. Let's introduce you to Cody Lackey, who was released from prison in February 2017, so earlier this year. He's been in prison 3 times in the last 3 years. Josette Baldacchino, who regularly visited her ex-partner in prison with her daughter and grandchildren, and she now volunteers for Partner of Prisoners and speaks to other prison families on the organisation's helpline. And Jakob Tass is here, Chief Executive of Nacro. Now, that is a social justice charity which works with offenders and ex-offenders, and they help them to settle back into society and rebuild relationships, or maintain them, and submitted comments to this review. Welcome, all of you. Cody, you were released in February this year. You've been inside 3 times in the last 3 years for, as I understand it, witness intimidation, an assault on a police officer, and then for an assault on someone else. Your mum came to visit you. You had that contact, you saw the effect on her, and you still came out and reoffended. Tell us why.
To be honest, my criminality was embedded within me, and I made very bad decisions going forward. It was only on my 3rd and final stretch that I got out of this year where I actually saw that the effect it was having on my mum psychologically, emotionally, and not to mention financially, and that was what stopped my criminality. I'm reformed now, and I campaign for prison reform across the board.
Right. And so her continuing visits on those three occasions when you were inside, in the end, they have helped you make a decision that you're not going to reoffend again.
Yeah, I don't think it was down to the visits personally. I just think it was down to I saw the effect it was having on my mum, and I simply grew a conscience overnight. And
okay.
I came out of prison, and that was it.
Yeah, fair enough. And it's definitely different this time, you say?
Absolutely. I'm staying away from crime. I've got a new circle of friends now. I'm a changed person and stuff. My crimes define me as a person, and now, like I say, I use my experiences to campaign for prison reform across the board.
Yeah. Josette, hello. Thanks for coming on the programme. Your ex-partner served an 8-year prison sentence, as I understand it. Why was it important to keep close contact with him when he was in prison?
I found it was important to keep contact with him because it gave him something to look forward to. It gave him something to look forward to coming home, and also it made an impact on our own family. And I think when he saw that, he understood that what he'd done was wrong. And I do agree with the fact that they should have some kind of video to be able to speak to him.
Yeah, because often people get sent to a jail that is hundreds of miles away from home, so the idea that you could go and visit regularly is a non-starter.
Sometimes it's really hard for families, like you said, especially if they go really far. And sometimes even if they're near home, it's hard to go on visits with ill health, etc. If they've got elderly parents, which in our case there was some elderly people there, so it was hard, really hard.
And what's it like going to visit someone you love in prison and taking your daughter and your grandchild with you?
It's not the best experience, not at all. Not when you're going to be searched, and not when you're being treated on the same lines of the offender.
What do you mean?
You kind of feel as though you're being treated as though you are the criminal.
Right.
Which is extremely hard, and it's not something that you should be put through. And that's where the support comes in from organisations like Partners of Prisoners.
Yeah. What do you think about these figures that suggest if contact is maintained when someone is inside, they're 39% less likely to reoffend? You just pulled a face there, Josette. Why?
I think, well, personally, I think I would have said half and half. I would have said 50%. The contact with families, it is very important, and I'm not saying that family support is going to stop all offenders reoffending, because it doesn't. You are going to get half that are going to look at the family support and they're going to stop. You're going to get another half that are just going to continue to do it, and it's not because they want to continue reoffending. It's just, it's become a way of life for them.
Yeah. Which is what Cody was saying. It was sort of embedded in him.
It is. It's easier.
Let me bring in Jakob Tass from Nacro then, this social justice charity. What do you think of this recommendation that inmates should be able to talk to family members on Skype via an iPad, for example, so that relatives can video call into prison to talk to their loved ones?
I think that's a very positive development. The whole report, we strongly support the report from Lord Farmer, and one of the recommendations is the preferred is physical meeting, face to face, and having that relationship continue on that basis. But as we already know, lots of prisoners far away, quite difficult to access, and exactly what we heard before, the treatment of children and family members is usually similar to the offender being treated as in prison, which is of course not right at all.
Well, that could change tomorrow, couldn't it?
That should change tomorrow, and that's another recommendation. But back to the FaceTime, Skype, regular contact. How was your day at school from a child? Or how, obviously the day in prison is not so interesting to talk about, most likely, but the relationship with the family members or with parents or anybody, to know what's going on, there's a life outside of prison that these people will get back to, and therefore the stronger the relationship is, the more ties they have that are worth continuing, the more likely it is that they don't want to go back to prison.
To the criminal ways.
Yes.
And what do you say to those people watching who will say, well, I haven't got an iPad, why should an inmate?
Yeah, I think this is not about issuing iPads as a toy, or that will be purely an instrument to be able to communicate with. So it's like a phone. I mean, today you can call, for example. We have experience in prison, and it's very different, as you can see in the report also, different experiences. But it's quite hard to even make phone calls. They're quite costly for offenders. It's hard for them to earn enough money even to make the phone calls. For those who are determined to keep these relationships going, we are not making it easy to do so. So this type of technology will make it easy, as it is accessible to many of us through smartphones or other.
Cody, you've been inside 3 times, so you know what it's like to lose your liberty. You know what the regime is like inside a jail. Do you think this idea of, video calls might lead critics to say this is softening the prison regime and it's meant to be a place of punishment?
The simple fact is, Victoria, we've seen in the last week or so, assaults in prisons are at a record high. 26,643 incidents in 12 months. That's up 20% on last year. Self-harm, 40,414 incidents within the last 12 months and stuff. The prison system is a powder keg, right? And I cannot stress enough how important family ties are. Children not seeing their dads because financial restraints are in place where people are having to travel hundreds of miles to go on visits. The cost of train fares, the price of food on the visits, accommodation, things like that, it all plays a part. So keeping it's integral, it's pivotal to I think if you put this in system, this Skype, I do believe it will reduce in part violent incidents in one way or another, and farm, which can only be seen as a good thing, and it will reduce incidents which will reflect well on the Ministry of Justice.
Yeah. And if reoffending is reduced as a result of introducing Skype or whatever, then that will save a lot more money to taxpayers who might be criticising the idea that an iPad would be in a jail.
So very much so, and it will help people not to commit any further crime, and therefore generate more victims. But I think it's really important. We have major issues at the moment in our prison system. We need to stop writing reports and start taking action to improve the circumstances, and therefore when we have these people captured in our prison, help and have a relentless focus on rehabilitation, which means giving them a roof to sleep under, making sure they have a job somehow, and these family ties are critically important to make our society safer, to reduce the number of people in prison, and therefore have more money available to make that all happen. That's very strongly our Nacro view.
Startling figure here, reoffending costs us, taxpayers, £15 billion a year. That's what reoffending
Yes.
costs us. Justice Minister David Lidington says we're committed to transforming prisons into places of safety and reform, and families can play a significant role in supporting an offender. And obviously they would point out that they're spending money on an extra 2,500 prison officers, but we'll see what the government do with this report. I mean, they set it up, so that doesn't mean they'll follow the recommendations, but you know, we'll see.
We hope so.
Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you, Josette. Thanks for coming on the programme.
Thank
and
you.
Cody, thank you. Thank you very much.
Victoria.
And Jakob from Nacro. Thank you.